Hello, this is John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for Texas and the southern region. It's been a pretty quiet week across most of the region. Some precipitation generally on the modest side over parts of Oklahoma. Areas in green are from a ½ inch to a little bit over an inch. A couple pockets heavier. And up in Kansas, actually that was in the form of rain and snow. We've seen that Arkansas has certainly been getting its share of precipitation. There's more precipitation in Arkansas. But then as we get in Texas, I think the overall picture has been very dry, with about 50% of the state receiving no rain whatsoever over the past week. Now, there were some storms along the coastal eastern section of the state. You can see the heavy rain there, and those were pockets of very significant rain, around 5 inches. But they were very isolated from a broad-scale picture. If we look at the percent of normal rainfall over the last 7 days, you see the widespread areas of below normal rainfall, and that's the areas of red. As we get into Oklahoma, you can see some streaks of above normal rainfall in blue right next to areas of below normal rainfall. And then we have to get north into Missouri and Kansas before we get the more extensive areas of above normal precipitation over the last week. I thought I'd take a moment here to go back and look at some precipitation anomalies, either wet or dry, over periods of 15, 30, 60, and 90-day periods. I want to focus on 30 days and 90 days. And if we look at 30 days here, and generally speaking, the blues and purples are wet, the yellows and reds are dry. So if we look over the last 30 days, what we see here is this track over eastern Kansas and eastern Oklahoma, most of East Oklahoma actually, has been somewhat wet. We have these wetter than normal anomalies, and we see patchy areas over east and northeast parts of Texas as well. So over a 30-day period, we've definitely seen a wetter trend over Oklahoma and eastern Kansas, and then even into the northeast part of Texas, we've seen some improvement. But I think if we go back towards 90 days, a longer range trend, that's where we begin to see that really over Texas, it's very dry still. Even over the areas in the short term have received more precipitation, and the dividing line's right along the boundary between Oklahoma and Texas. So Oklahoma, both in the short term and in the longer term, have seen some improvement. But that improvement over Texas has really only been in the short term. As far as initial soil moisture goes, this is how wet the ground is. In the upper part of the soil column, green is wet, and the colors of yellow and orange are dry. And look how abrupt this is here. We see a very clear dividing line where it's wet to the east and dry to the west. And that's been a long-term trend that it extends well back into the winter months. If we look at the calculated soil moisture anomalies, we do see that trend of above normal precipitation. It doesn't show up quite as much on this type of graphic here. This shows that most of the area is still somewhat dry, and I think this is a longer term type calculation. So it's showing that even though Oklahoma has received more recent rainfall from a longer term perspective, it very well could still be fairly dry from a lower soil moisture consideration. Now, the high stream flow and flooding is not all that far away. There's a very significant flood going on across parts of the Illinois and Missouri River, and then snowmelt flooding up in the Red River of the North. I just wanted to show you from a perspective, it looks like there won't be that problem over the south, but I did want to show you that there is very much action as far as flooding goes over parts of the Midwest. Now, I mentioned there was a little bit of snow, and I did want to show you here where it fell. And this time of year, the snow goes very quickly. And you can see there's not much snow on the ground here at all, actually no snow. And I just wanted to point out how far north it is, just a very small area here. This is actually what has melted in the last 24 hours, and the snowpack over the northern plains is melting very quickly. It will be reduced later this week with some cold air pulling in, but I did want to show you now. Pretty much the snow season's over. Maybe some late snow this week, but any snow we do get will go very quickly. So how much precipitation is needed to improve things? From a perspective of Oklahoma and much of Kansas, pretty good shape. Right now it's 0 inches to bring a Palmer drought index back up to a neutral condition. But if we see over Texas, West Texas, we see about 3 to 6 inches. South Texas, a little bit more, 6 to 9 inches. The very tip of South Texas, over 9 inches. And there's a possibility of that region getting some needed precipitation this week. But I think from an overall perspective, I think that 3 to 6 looks like a good average over Texas. But then, like I said, Oklahoma, Arkansas is in a bit better shape due to that recent rain. Okay, so the big picture this week, a little bit more action to our north. Early this week, what we're going to have is the jet stream well to the north. That's that positive Arctic oscillation I've been talking about. The jet has pulled up to the north. And then by the end of the week, it's going to dip to the south, and we're going to have a closed low here. And what concerns us is the dip in the south, the southerly branch of the jet, and that will bring some precipitation to the area. Now, there's not a lot of energy associated with that, so it looks like it's not going to be all that significant, but it does look like there will be a chance of precipitation with that southerly branch. So here's the rainfall forecast for this week, and what you can see is just modest amounts of precipitation. I don't have a whole lot of high confidence in the precipitation over the southern part of the state, but there could be some welcome rain in that area, as much as an inch of rain, and if it fell in that area, it would definitely be very welcome over South Texas. As far as soil moisture changes go, here are the changes. Browns are getting drier soil moisture, and the blues are getting wetter, and what you can see is for most of the region it looks like it's going to be drying soils over the next couple weeks. Now I wanted to look out a little bit further here. These are climate models. To the left, these two columns are temperature, and to the right are precipitation for weeks. This would be week 1 and 2, and this is cooler greens, and blues are cooler, and you can see this week definitely looks like cooler temperatures over a very broad part of the middle of the nation. Week 2, this green is also looks like generally cooler over most of the region, but not quite as strong. Then as far as precipitation, let's look at week 2. Looks like a fairly strong possibility of drier weather pushing in for week 2 according to this climate model. Thought you might want to look out even further. This is weeks 3 and 4. And I don't see a real strong trend one way or the other. If anything, it looks like on week 3 that dry signal continues here. This is the oranges, generally dry, maybe in the Midwest, a little bit more precipitation. And then week 4, I guess really no clear signal one way or the other. So generally speaking, it looks like it's going to be quieting down. So the takeaway points from this week's briefing: scattered storms mid to late this week as that jet stream sags to the south. Not a whole lot of energy, so I think it's going to be fairly scattered with just modest precipitation. And then as we get into weeks 2, 3, and 4, it generally right now looks fairly quiet, starting off cool, probably moderating back to normal. But as far as precipitation, fairly quiet. If you have any questions I haven't answered, feel free to email me at john@bluewateroutlook.com. I will be updating the briefing for the southern region again next Sunday. Thank you for listening.